Hello there, Cassie, or whoever else decides to listen to this. This is a audio recording, of me reading chapter 1 of The Ghost, or the Brave Hunter, sorry, hold on. The title of this book is The Brave Mortal's Guide to Ghost Hunting, written by Matsuo. She has a YouTube channel and a TikTok. I'm going to be reading this chapter by chapter, so it's like an audio format. For this video, other than showing the cover of the book, I'm mainly just going to leave it as like a dark screen. So yeah, in future, episodes or chapters, it'll be a little bit different. There are cats here, so they might get in the way. Doors may or may not open. But I will try to make this as easy and simple as I can. So, yeah, let us begin. For the first episode of this little series, I'm going to include the introduction and chapter 1 together. I will also make a separate video that just has the dedication, the acknowledgements, and the table of contents. That will be a separate video. This video, I'm going to incorporate the introduction and chapter 1 together. So, starting on page 1, introduction. What is ghost hunting? This seems like an easy answer. Hunting for ghosts. But it's so much more than that. What most people know about the ghost hunting comes from the paranormal television industry. From the early television specials in the mid-20th century to the multitude of ghost hunting shows today, there has been a mass exposure of paranormal oddities. Because questions of the afterlife are nearly universal, the popularity of ghosts and ghost hunting never really goes away. The commercial industry has ups and downs, but we can count on it to eventually bounce back as people get interested again. The paranormal community is rich and inclusive with the right people. Regardless of what your involvement is in the paranormal, whether you want to go in 100% or go on the occasional ghost hunt, the community is ready for you. There is research, there is testing, there are repeated scenarios, there's equipment, there's traveling, there's learning. Speaking of learning, ghost hunting can almost be an academic department all on its own. Even with this, I am honestly not a fan of the term ghost hunting, quote-unquote, or the thought of hunting for ghosts. When I hear about paranormal investigators going on a quote-unquote hunt, I think of Elmer Fudd saying, "Be very, very quiet. I'm hunting spirits." If you replace ghost with a word like people, it becomes people hunting. Regardless of how you think, quote-unquote, people hunting is a rather creepy phrase. But ghosts are people. It can be easy to distinguish people and ghosts as two different things, but they're really the same. Think of that ghost as a spirit without a body. They're still people. I know what you're thinking. If I hate the term ghost hunting so much, why is it the title of this book? Well, the term is more popular than others, like paranormal investigating or research. When we think of ghost hunting, we all have a fairly consistent image in our heads. In fact, most of us are probably imagining a similar version of the concept, complete with night vision and EMF meters crackling. This is the reason why I wrote this book. I wanted to create a guide for those curious about what paranormal investigation and research is all about, and I wanted to empower all with knowledge as you embark on this journey. Ghost hunting reflects our society. Even though we are moving forward in technology and how we interact with each other, we humans still want to go back to basics. In a world where we have information at the tip of our fingertips, we still have questions with no answers. Yet, so many mysteries of the past remain unsolved. We still don't have a confirmed positive ID on Jack the Ripper, and we still have no answers as to what the citizens of Point Pleasant, West Virginia experienced during the Mothman days. Weird stuff happens every day all over the world. Today's technology merely exposes the anomaly, but it has not helped us in solving the mystery. This is why I believe that while technology may not be able to give us an answer, it can at least grab our attention and spread the word about the weirdness happening around the world. These days, the average non-paranormal person goes on a ghost hunt because they want to get a glimpse of something weird. They yearn for something that goes outside of their daily routine. Or they might want to hear a ghost story or two and get their adrenaline rushing from a potential run-in with the unknown. These people will usually do the ghost hunt for a night under the guidance of a tour company and then move on with their lives the next morning. That is, until the urge to do ghost hunting strikes again. Ghost tours are now thriving because of this curiosity. It seems that no matter which city you visit, some sort of ghost tour is available where you can learn about the local lore. History tells us that people have always had some sort of interest in the paranormal. Dating back thousands of years, communication with ghosts was always a thing. Perhaps it's because we don't really know what happens to us after we die. Ever since man could look to the sky and believe in something bigger than himself, we have been trying to find proof of an afterlife. This yearning has evolved into hundreds of different ways of investigating. What many don't realize is that ghost hunting has a very rich history. Many of the methods we use today come from hundreds of years of trial and error. Of course, ghost hunting was fine-tuned in the 20th century, which laid a more solid foundation for what we use today. But keep in mind that these methods are not perfect. Before you go into ghost hunting, you must first determine what you want to get out of it. If you're looking to be scared and live your favorite horror movie in real life, this might not be the route you want to go. If you want to go learn about another aspect of history and perhaps hear a ghost story to freak you out, you're getting warmer. If you're someone who is of the logical mind and has to have solid proof of anomalies, then this field will make your hair turn gray. What is truly unique about the paranormal community is that people come from all different backgrounds and experiences, and yet everyone has a place here. Sure, we often end up with tensions and disagreements, but our different ideas are what makes this field all the more interesting. We're able to gain different perspectives on what it means to believe in the paranormal, what it means to question it, and what it means to validate our individual experiences. So many books tell you how to do ghost hunt already fill the shelves. All you need to do is head to your local library or go online and type "how to ghost hunt" in your search bar, and voila! We live in an age of instant gratification with information available everywhere. Yet, even with a lot of information online, or maybe because we have so much access to information, we can't assume that it's always correct. Take Wikipedia, for example. Anyone can edit Wikipedia, and yet millions of people, especially college students, depend on it for information. For me, I like to use Wikipedia for sources. This means I'm scrolling to the bottom to see who is cited as a reliable source, and I go from there. But even experts, especially self-proclaimed experts, can be wrong. I found that most of the available books and write-ups are either outdated, resort to the same basic methodology, or are biased. The Brave Mortal's Guide is meant for the curious person who is considering going on a ghost hunt and wants to see both sides of the coin. Well, in the paranormal world, there are multiple coins, and thus multiple sides. If you look at the field from just a few years prior to this book's publication, so much has changed. Technology continues to evolve, even if it's not scientifically sound. New methods are coming into the light each day and are tested out on the field. What people were using 5 years ago isn't being used as much today, if at all. If we go back even further, we find true relics in ghost hunting gear. For example, while you may find an EMF reader in your basic ghost hunting kit, what we understand of it has changed. Back then, people would say that ghosts were able to manipulate the devices and make the lights move. Today, even the strictest believer will tell you that the K2 or EMF meter is meant to measure the electromagnetic field. Cell phones, walkie-talkies, computers, and more will make it go off. I also know that the many facets of ghost hunting can be overwhelming at first. With so many voices in the field, how do you decide who to believe right off the bat? If you truly want to look for ghosts and find proof of the afterlife, we have to do more than just visit as many locations as possible. We have to do more than listen to the tour guides. We have to do more than just read a few books. My intention is to give you, my dear reader, a taste of what paranormal research is actually like. From the beginning stages of research and preparation to data review and presentation, the paranormal world is not so scary once you know the steps. I've written this book for you to save you the trial and error phase that I went through for years finding my way as an investigator and researcher. Mistakes were made and many lessons were learned. My hope is that by skipping those quote-unquote growing pains and learning through my experience, you can go directly to having a more fulfilling and interesting ghost hunting experience. I've been in the field well for over a decade, and I did all the typical foolery in my early days of looking for ghosts. I am grateful for these experiences, though, because they made me the paranormal investigator that I am today. I also would like to use this book to advocate the use of empathy and other more humane practices of paranormal investigation. Treating spirits like people who have died means avoid commanding performances and disrespectful talk in the pursuit of a more exciting investigation. I will share with you stories of my early ghost hunting days, what communications are most effective than others, and what I've and what I've learned working with psychic mediums, how to avoid being fooled by fraud, and why you don't need to spend thousands of dollars on equipment. At the end of the day, you can save yourself a tremendous amount of time and money by hearing it from someone who has a no-nonsense approach to the field. So, why is ghost hunting so popular? Ghost hunting rose to a massive popularity in the early 2000s with the explosion of paranormal reality shows and the innovation of the internet. The internet has been around for a few years, but it was not yet accessible to the mass audience it enjoys today. Around the late 1990s and early 2000s, the internet became a regular part of the standard American home. From there, message boards and groups were created. People finally found a place where they could talk about their experiences with like-minded people. We now had chat communities that encompassed the entire community, and no matter where we are living, we could explore ideas with people who thought like us. The early days of the internet also offered a massive level of anonymity. Mainstream television has certainly played a part in shaping our perception of the paranormal. I do appreciate how reality television has made the paranormal, quote-unquote, more normal, so to speak, and has given people an outlet to express their own beliefs. These social changes have created a strong paranormal community where people can share their experiences with like-minded people. Ghost hunting is also popular simply because it's something people don't normally do. It's not something like working out at the gym or going out to eat. It's not an average activity. It's exciting. It's spooky. It's mysterious. We watch celebrities do it on TV. You'd be surprised how many people are actually interested in the paranormal or have had some sort of paranormal experience but don't want to talk about it in public. Many are not brave enough to go out on a ghost hunt on their own. I can't even count how many people I've hosted on ghost hunts who have been terrified. While the paranormal can be scary, it can also be fun and fulfilling. Most of us ghost hunters are on a mission to either find proof of the afterlife or to make a connection with history. I've also found that ghost hunting is so popular because we don't know what is waiting for us on the other side. Whether it's because we lost friends or loved ones, or because we are afraid of our own eventual demise, we want some sort of confirmation that there is life after death. Finally, the utter mystery of death is the reason why so many people, me included, are interested in the paranormal. Death makes me uncomfortable, and I've almost died a few times. One was from a car accident, and I've had a few brushes with health issues that remind me of my own mortality. I want to know for sure that our consciousness survives once our physical bodies are gone. I truly want to know if I'll ever see my mother, my grandma, grandpa, all of my friends who have left this world too soon. If I could have that one chance to interact with a ghost and be able to confirm information without the chance of confirmation bias, then maybe I won't be so afraid of death. Until then, death is going to continue to make me a little uneasy. However, you might have a different reason for reading this book. Perhaps your reason wasn't even mentioned. The paranormal manages to bring in people from all walks of life, all for a common interest and a common purpose. As you get ready to start this journey, ask yourself of why you want to get into ghost hunting and what you hope to get out of it. So sit back, relax, and curl up with a drink as you learn how to fish in the world of a paranormal investigator. End of the introduction. Alright, now we're going to continue with this audio with Chapter 1. Chapter 1. Types of Ghosts. As we have nearly seen, trying to define a ghost is no easy task. You could say this is a nearly impossible feat. But why is that? Because we have yet to trap a ghost and be able to analyze it, we don't really know what it is. We don't know what it is made of and what it makes it tick. In your exploration of the paranormal, you'll likely run into numerous definitions of ghosts, spirits, etc. Some groups may even see these terms as synonymous, while others vehemently address a strong difference between these definitions. Everyone will have a different answer. People interpret the paranormal in different ways because it is such a personal experience. For the purpose of this book, we will move forward with the idea that a ghost is an intelligent being capable of independent thought and can make meaningful responses. These are usually human spirits. I may also use the words entity or spirit as well. If I use the term residual, then I am talking about a haunting that has no consciousness. Unlike a ghost or spirit, this type of haunting is similar to a recording that plays over and over again like a broken record. It is an occurrence that happens like clockwork. In typical fashion in the paranormal field, we can't really agree on why this happens. Spirits. You may also encounter hauntings by inhuman spirits. I must emphasize that this does not mean that they are evil. These hauntings and occurrences can sometimes be called elementals, like fae or spirits of nature. And while we're at it, let me also say that even a human spirit may bring a negative energy, but it does not mean that they are evil. If a person was a jerk in life, there's a good chance they might be a jerk in the afterlife. Considering that so many things are happening in the paranormal community these days, with people getting involved who aren't well versed in people skills, I sometimes think that these ghosts are in a bad mood. Some of the most popular haunted locations get traffic every day, and local spirits converse with people every day. For someone still alive, this can be extremely overwhelming of an experience and will deter anyone from wanting to engage. This might explain why some people will get lots of activity at a haunted location one night, but the next group coming in won't get any kind of engagement. As mentioned before, a ghost is defined as the spirit of a person or another being who has not moved on and is sticking around our world. Some say it is the survival of consciousness. Others say that the soul is existing outside of the human body. With so many definitions of what a ghost or spirit actually is, ironically enough, we have yet to find a clear-cut definition. Some might see a ghost as residual energy stuck in a time loop, while others define a spirit as consciousness and aware being. You may only talk to people who have completely different definitions, and that is okay. We have no streamlined process when it comes to defining these terms. We have no official organization dedicated to defining or finding consensus on how to ghost hunt either. You will find hundreds of different techniques. Ultimately, you have to choose the one that works best for you personally. I could go on to say that there's no right or wrong way to ghost hunt, but there actually is. I'll get more into that later in this book. For now, we need to address the elephant in the room. Why does a ghost stick around? Questions like these have inspired people to look for answers as to why this phenomenon happens. Most want to have clear proof of the afterlife. Can you imagine what this world would be like if we were able to prove, without a shadow of a doubt, that ghosts exist? While we may not be able to settle the debate of what a ghost is at this moment, we can discuss theories as to why a ghost may want to stick around. These are the conventional and most well-known reasons for a ghost to stick around. Unfinished business, delivering a message to a loved one, fear of crossing over, feeling trapped by another person unable to let go. Unfinished business seems to be the most popular reason for a ghost to be hanging around. In my experience, I've also found that a lot of entities are actually afraid of crossing over. Granted, I'm not sure who exactly wrote the rules of the afterlife as we know them, so I can't comment on whether crossing over is a good thing or not. I've had many psychics tell me that once you cross over, you're able to return to the physical world and visit loved ones. But the ones who are usually hesitant to cross over are the ones who may not have been good people in life. In other words, they're afraid that they'll end up in hell or some other eternal punishment. I understand that this opens up a whole can of worms when it comes to religion. I won't go into that just yet. At least, not into the first chapter. Many people assume that ghost hunting started in the early 2000s with the inception of the TV show Ghost Hunters. While that show may have influenced today's ghost hunting practices, it is far from the inspiration of the practice. In order to fully understand ghost hunting as it is today, we have to turn back at the hands of time by a few thousand years. We have to become anthropologists and look into the roots of communication and spirituality. From the time man became aware of the presence of a deity they worshipped, offered sacrifices, and attempted communication. According to Sir Edward Taylor, animism is one of the oldest religions, if not the oldest. Animism is the belief that all objects, whether animal, inanimate, etc., have some sort of spiritual essence. It is the idea that other things have souls other than humans. One could even argue that animists struggle to see the difference between animals, living beings, and what we consider to be things. With this in mind, we can argue that animism might have had a hand in what we consider to be paranormal culture. When you remember that people believe objects can be possessed or haunted, the idea of animism does not seem that far-fetched. With the Annabelle craze making people so nervous around dolls and people trying to attach their essence to beloved jewelry, perhaps the souls that animists believe to reside in inanimate objects are a manifestation of the human soul. In modern society, even being religious or spiritual is common, and animism is relevant even to modern-day beliefs. For example, in Japan, people describe an immense respect for material things. A certain celebrity became famous for her decluttering ideas and only to keep things that spark joy. According to some, if you choose to get rid of things in your home, you must thank each object before putting it into the donation box or throwing it away completely. Even the simple business card exchange that has become famous has a very spiritual basis. For one, when you hand your sorry about that. Even the simple business card exchange that has become famous has a very spiritual basis. For one, when you hand your business card, it is always facing the customer, and your card is always underneath theirs. As you interact with the customer, the cards are always on display. This is because the business card is considered to be an extension of the person. The card possesses a part of that person's spirit. In the Shinto religion, there is a concept of Yaoyorozi no Kami, otherwise known as 8 million gods. This is about as far from monotheism as one can get. Where do 8 million gods go? Well, this means that there is an infinite number of places and material things in which gods can dwell. The belief that sacred spirits inhabit nature while other gods dwell in simple things like rice, household cooking items, etc., is why you will see the Japanese treat everything with respect. Why am I talking about this in a paranormal book? For thousands of years, people have enjoyed a good ghost story. Like other narratives, our earliest ghost stories are passed down as an oral tradition. Eventually, the popular ghost stories were written down. Pliny the Younger seems to be one of the only sources of ancient ghost stories, which we will get into in Chapter 5. Given that the Greek mythology implies a belief in Hades, the river Styx, and more, the storytellers must have believed in the survival of some sort of consciousness after death. Some of the most vocal and active spirits I've encountered are those who want their stories to be told. Perhaps the fear of being forgotten is a fear worse than death for many of us. For example, consider how many people lived during the American Revolution. Think about it, and then ask yourself, how many of them do we actually remember? We can see that one way to get immortality is to become famous. Is it the only way? Even since the earliest tales, we seem to have the same formula for a good ghost story. The ghost stories of today follow a pattern very similar to the stories told before, whether the story is presented as real or fiction. With so many consistencies, we have to wonder if spirits, afterlife, and the idea of an eternal consciousness are due to an element of truth, or are we just being so taken in by the same myth that it has become a common belief? With this in mind, hauntings don't happen without a reason. We have found that paranormal activity always has some sort of catalyst at its start. Something as simple as the presence of a new person in the house, renovations, or a new object being brought into the house can trigger a disruption in the energy of a space. Eventually, these disruptions shake up the person's life somehow. Or in this case, maybe a person's afterlife. Man-made ghosts. To further complicate the definition of a ghost, some believe we can actually create our own ghosts. This goes back to the idea of energy. One of the most famous cases of a man-made ghost is known as the Philip experiment, which was conducted by the Toronto Society for Psychical Research. Researchers wanted to see if they could create a ghost. In 1972, in Toronto, Ontario, Canada, a mathematician by the name of A.R.G. Owen and a psychologist named Dr. Joel Whitten oversaw a parapsychological experiment that would change the paranormal field forever. A group of brilliant minds who were members of TSPR, which included a former Mensa chairperson, got together and created a character through what we only know as a purposeful methodology. When they tried to communicate with that spirit through a seance, Dr. Whitten was mainly present to observe, while Owen was there for guidance. The group's first task was to create a character and then make up a fictional biography of said character. They created Philip Aylesford. Philip was an aristocratic Englishman who lived in the middle 1600s. He was born in 1624 and was knighted at the age of 16 thanks to an early military career. He had a wife named Dorothy, who was the daughter of a nobleman. His wife was known to be frigid and not very friendly. Then Philip's story gets very interesting and very reminiscent of a soap opera set in Oliver Cromwell's time. He fell in love with a dark-haired gypsy by the name of Margot. Philip was so smitten with Margot that he brought her to live on his property by the stables, and the two had an affair. Eventually, cold Dorothy found out about Margot and accused her of witchcraft and trying to steal her husband. Philip was cowardly and did not come to Margot's defense. Poor Margot was found guilty of witchcraft and was then burned at the stake. Philip was so stricken with grief and remorse that he often paced around his Diddington estate. One day, his body was found at the bottom of the battlements after committing suicide. He was only 30 years old. This group even used their artistic talents and created their own portrait of Philip. For over a year, the group got together and meditated on Philip. They discussed his life and tried to visualize him in as much detail as possible. This was in a fully lit room. Sometimes a presence was felt in the room, but no one could attest that it was Philip they were feeling. Some people take for granted just how long this process took. Eventually, the group decided to change their methodology for establishing communication and agreed to try a seance. They sang songs and had pictures of a castle that Philip might have lived in. They dimmed the lights and created a classic environment for a spooky seance. And this ended up working. The group got their first rap on the table. They would ask yes or no questions with 1 rap for yes and 2 for no. Apparently the spirit answered that he was Philip when asked. The group met frequently and used multiple tables. The tables would move side to side on a thick carpeting and in some descriptions would even stand up on one leg. I had the pleasure of seeing one of the tables in person in 2017 when I was attending the Ghost Evacuation Conference in Bedford, Pennsylvania in 2018. The table was your typical folding table with metal legs and a plastic cover. Anyone walking by would assume it's unremarkable if they're not aware of the history. Underneath the table were signatures from all the participants in the Philip experiment, as well as a few paranormal celebrities who got to use the table. Philip was able to do tasks on command like dimming the lights and creating cool breezes. The activity was so amazing that the group then held the seance in front of a live audience of 50 people. Philip was not shy in that setting either. The public seance was actually filmed, and the footage can be found online. The group did have a goal of getting Philip to materialize, but this never happened. Regardless, the results of the experiment were considered to be a success. The TSPR decided to try the experiment again, and with a new group of people. In just a few weeks, the new group created and made contact with a fictional character named Lilith, who was a French-Canadian spy. The experiment was once again repeated a few more times and even included a character from the future. The experiment even reached as far as Australia, where it was called the Skippy experiment after a character they created, a 14-year-old girl by the name of Skippy Cartman. I can't help but wonder what happened to these characters after the experiment was over. Did the groups just abandon them? Or did they do some sort of closing session? Were the characters just left to wander? Did they fade away? Excuse the expression, but from what I understand, the groups literally ghosted their characters and moved on. In the case of the Philip experiment and subsequent experience that followed, this was a man-made ghost and adopted an identity and traits that were given to it by its creators. Tulpa phenomenon. The Philip experiment is not the only case where an entity was created by people. In Indian Buddhism, the belief is that the mind-made body is the fruit of contemplative life. The mind-made body was how a figure like Gautama Buddha was able to travel through the heavenly realms. If this sounds like astral projection to you, I would agree. They have a lot in common. Tibetan Buddhism has a concept where they believe in emanation bodies, basically something created from a person. A common belief is that the next incarnation of the Dalai Lama can already be seen through emanations and that the people living today could be emanations. From there, Theosophists took these concepts and developed the idea of a tulpa. A tulpa is a creation of the human mind, and it can eventually gain the ability to act independently from its creator. If someone wants to create a tulpa, they can create the concept in their mind and then treat it like a living person. The ideas of the tulpa will eventually morph and manifest into its own independent being. However, because they are created from thoughts, a tulpa is never fully finished. Some believe that perhaps ghosts are actually tulpas or some sort of man-made experiments like Philip. As much as I want to get on board with this idea, I can't, because creating something like Philip or a tulpa takes an immense amount of concentration and thinking. I believe it would be particularly difficult for one person to just create a ghost. However, I do wonder if we are occasionally participating in one long-term Philip experiment, especially when investigating at famously haunted locations where we are given regular and well-rehearsed stories about specific people. Okay. Residual hauntings. Here's my theory. I believe that we can expel a lot of energy even without realizing it. Have you ever walked into the room after an argument took place and you can feel the tension? Even though the people present seem fine, you can tell something is off. Like the term, you can cut the tension with a knife, we know inside our souls that something is wrong. I believe that this energy can remain in a place if the area is not cleansed. Have you ever walked into a place where someone experienced trauma? It doesn't have to be something as dramatic as walking into a Lizzie Borden house. It can be walking into a hospital. A lot happens in a hospital. Not only is life born, but it also ends. As we know, death is a lot like life in the sense that each one is different. Not everyone will have a peaceful death. Some might leave this earth in a much more Plus, add in the energy of someone who's visiting the hospital for some sort of trauma. I doubt someone is going around smudging or making rounds to cleanse the place regularly. That means energy remains. Even if you feel uneasy at a hospital, this may be coming from your own personal experiences that your energy is working around. In short, energy is key in the paranormal. One flawed theory, known as the stone tape theory, suggests that the things around us can store emotions and energy. From trees to the ground to structures and more, these material items of the stone tape theory are recorded and then replayed under the right conditions, as if Mother Nature became the biggest recording studio we may have ever seen. You may have noticed that I said it was a flawed theory. For one, finding a source for the stone tape theory has been difficult. The term seems to have become famous and validated thanks to modern paranormal culture. I don't believe this discredits the theory necessarily, but if someone tries to tell you that this theory goes back decades, you will want to ask for their sources. Well, the concept goes back quite a bit, but the name itself is fairly new. In 1972, the BBC aired a drama called The Stone Tape. Without going into explicit descriptions, an electronics company goes into a house to do work. They encounter an apparition of a young woman on the stairs. Not everyone can see or hear her at first. The theory is then mentioned that the stone blocks of the house stored images and experiences from a traumatic event, hence creating a paranormal experiences. For decades, many people have believed in this concept, even if they did not call it the stone tape theory. In 1961 book, Ghost in Gold by Thomas Charles Lethbridge, he mentions a similar concept, but again, he never mentions the theory. He examines the idea that memories and emotions can be stored in inanimate objects. He goes on to further say that cells can resonate and vibrate, thus explaining memory transferences. If you're curious about Lethbridge's background, interestingly enough, he left the field of archaeology for paranormal research. Lethbridge cites a professor of Oxford University as a source for this concept. Price was a professor of logic, ironically. In this time, his belief in the paranormal may have not been seen as logical. Yet, some of the greatest minds of our time, like Charles Dickens and Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, believed in the unknown. Price also served as the president for the Society for Psychical Research at one point in his life. In an SPR publication from 1938 to 1939, Price's presidential address was titled Haunting and the Psychic Ether Hypothesis. In this address, he made the claim that objects carry memory traces. If someone were to touch one of these objects, that person would have a retrospective experience. Price went on to say that these experiences were not supernatural. Instead, we are experiencing the emotions and memories of what once was. If you're familiar with antique collecting and its complicated relationship with the paranormal, you'll know that there have been countless cases of antiques being tied with paranormal experiences. Television networks have created TV shows from this idea. People have become celebrities based on this idea. Artifact hauntings are well known in the paranormal community. Could this be related? In this way, we can connect the belief of Urasei no Kami, or 8 million gods, that I described earlier. I explained that the etiquette of business card exchange was important because the card was seen as an extension of that person. Indeed, the Yorogoso no Kami belief is that the ideas have three sources of the spirits that inhabit them. 1, the person that made them. 2, the person that uses them. And 3, the materials from which the things were made. This would explain why something sacred to your mother's wedding ring possesses part of her spirit. This is why so many believe that the spirit of an artist is in their work. This would explain why so many antiques are believed to be haunted. Even something as simple as paper would possess a spirit because it was made from trees. But this also begs the question, if memories can be stored in objects and our environmental surroundings, can consciousness be stored too? This does sound a bit futuristic, especially since there are rumors that scientists are seeking ways to upload human consciousness onto a computer, thus living forever as some sort of machine. Story time. This is one of the more humorous stories I have to share when it comes to meeting other people and learning their theories of ghost hunting. I did not have the most positive experience with this person since he was trying for a spot on my ghost hunting group and he did not get it. He didn't take the news well. But with his story, you might understand why I did not accept him on the team. He was adamant, and I mean willing to lay down his life that you could electrocute ghosts. To be fair, our brains do function with electricity, and right now, mainstream ghost hunting goes with the thought that ghosts can alter electromagnetic fields. This gentleman also went on to talk about how you could take a taser and zap ghosts into submission, just like a regular person. He also believed that you could engage in hand-to-hand combat with ghosts, and that all ghost hunters should take martial arts as part of their training against them. And yes, he was serious. This only goes to show that you don't have to take everything at face value from other individuals in the paranormal. I also learned that perhaps there are experiences that are so common across the board that they might be worthy of categorizing. Since meeting this individual, I have yet to meet someone with a similar theory. End of Chapter 1. Page 10. Written by Alex Matsuo.